I love aviation. Beyond loving aviation, I think it's in my blood. I grew up in an aerospace family in Los Angeles. My dad owned a foundry, and we manufactured parts for Boeing, for McDonnell Douglas, for Grumman, Northrop Grumman now. It was an aerospace family in a showbiz town. You know, we lived on the west side, so it was mostly showbiz people, but it was aerospace is what drove us. You know, my dad would come home and he would talk about the customers that he would go and see, and he would talk about what are we building things for. Well, today we're building it for the Mark 46 torpedo, and today we're building parts for the Boeing 727. So aerospace is in my blood, and you know, this is the reason I live 2 miles from an airport. It's as much. It's not just about convenience. It's about, you know, I just love watching the planes take off and land, and there is something profound happening in China in aviation that harkens so much back to my childhood days growing up in Southern California that it's an eye-opener. I've been watching aviation kind of casually for a very long time. It hasn't been something where I've done an awful lot of client work, but it's always been, as we say in Chinese, my aihao. It's a hobby. It's been a focus. We've done some work now with the aviation industry, and originally I was watching it because I was fascinated to see what was happening with the airlines. You know, when I first moved to China was right about the time where CAAC, the Civil Aviation Administration of China, was breaking into actual airlines, where Air China started, China Southern, China Eastern, where they were taking their initial listings overseas. And so for me, that marked the beginning of a profound change in China. Initially, aviation in China was a government service, and that's all it was. They had long hoped to have an industry here, but it was just kind of slow getting off the ground. Most of the focus was defense. You know, we want to build fighters because we're tired of buying them from the Russians. And we want to build motorcycles because we're tired of buying those from the Japanese. But we want to build fighters. It was a defense-driven industry. It was fighters and cargo planes. Great. That has changed. And what has changed it is that China is now facing having to spend an immense amount of its treasure just for the equipment to move its own people from one part of the country to the other. And they're starting to say, we love dealing with Boeing and we love dealing with Airbus, but we don't love seeing those huge flows of money going overseas. And they're looking for alternatives to having that cash go offshore. That first step has been going into the manufacturing business. And we've seen over time how the aviation industry has gone from creating a plane just to show that they could do it, which was the old J-10, 707 knockoff. They made 3 of them, and now they're all museum pieces. Okay. Now we have the ARJ-21, the Asia Regional Jet 21, which is, for all intents and purposes, the old McDonnell Douglas MD-95 with a few nominal changes to it to update the design. So it's a twin jet with the engines in the rear, a high T-tail, and they think they're going to sell a few of these, and they will, and they'll sell them to domestic airlines. And that's their first step, okay? Is this what China's aviation industry is going to turn into? Probably not. But we're also focused on the ARJ-21 and this idea that China will build a jumbo jet, which is just a larger 150, 200 passenger plane that's currently being called the C919. We're missing the bigger picture in China's aviation business. China is in the midst of creating an aerospace industry. On the one hand, you've got the rocket launches, the long marches. On the other hand, you've got a business that's actually starting to create its own airliners. What to me is more fascinating, having come from, you know, being a subcontractor while I was growing up, essentially, is the ecosystem now that starts to grow around all of that. It's the avionics, it's the flight control systems, it's the guys who are building landing gear. What's happening is the leading global suppliers of all these products are coming to China, and they're starting to set up joint ventures. And all this knowledge about how to do this stuff is starting to seep into the ranks of Chinese engineers, to seep into the universities, and to begin to build the foundation of a profound aerospace industry that is unique to anything we've ever seen. If you look at the European and the American aerospace industries, really what they are is a conglomeration of all the companies that developed in the industry 80 years ago that gradually either got absorbed by everyone or went bankrupt. The U.S. aviation business and the European aviation business are the end result of 80 years of consolidation. China doesn't have the time to wait through an 80-year of consolidation process. So they're going to build national champions at kind of the integration level where you put it all together in one plane and then sell it. But what is going to happen is you're going to see a lot of entrepreneurial activity happening around the stuff that goes into the plane. The seats, okay, the in-flight entertainment, the equipment to move cargo, the cargo containers, everything from the profoundly technological to the sublimely basic. And that's what's going to be interesting about China's aviation industry. Now, what they have to do to make that happen is they have to actually recognize that this is an activity that they want to encourage. It isn't just about, hey, Airbus, come on over to Tianjin and start putting together A320s. You know, hey, Comex, start building a jumbo jet. What they need is to build all of this, and it's going to happen. All right, it's going to get to the point where they're going to say there's 2 big cities in this country that we're going to build an aviation and aerospace industry around. Now, how are we going to do it? Here's the question that is going to drive all of us for the next 5 to 10 years. What is the role that China plays for everyone in the aviation and aerospace industry? Is this going to be a market? Are they going to be partners? Or essentially, are we watching this market create our long-term competition? And what is going to be the approach that this competition is going to take? If you look at the Comex C919, which is this still on the drawing boards airliner that kind of falls where the Boeing 757 used to fall into. It's around 200 passengers, and it's a short to medium range jetliner. Where is that going to fall? Where is that going to get sold? Yeah, all right, they'll buy some in China. The real concern is when Boeing and Airbus and all of the kind of second-tier airframe manufacturers look around the world, they aren't looking at the U.S. as a long-term growth market. They aren't looking at Western Europe as a long-term growth market. They're looking at the emerging economies. That's exactly what the C919 and these types of jets are being built to go into. You're never going to see them, C919, with a U.S. livery, okay, flying around the United States for Southwest. It's not going to happen, okay? No matter how strapped U.S. airlines get for cash, they aren't going to be flying Chinese airliners. It's a passenger prejudice thing and nothing else. Where you're going to be seeing it is Africa, okay? You're going to be seeing it in Southeast Asia. You're going to be seeing it in Southwest Asia. You're going to be seeing it perhaps even in India. But these are going to be critical markets. So the great battlefield in aviation and aerospace for China is not going to be China. That's sold. It's not going to be the United States. They're never going to get there. It's going to be these other battleground areas. So the question is, how do we need to be positioning every aviation business over the long term to take advantage of that and to make sure that they aren't cloned out of existence?